Welcome to the Dork Forest. Jackie and her pals will never bore us. Shameless confessions
about our obsession
will make us laugh and smile. So let's explore the Dork Forest and dork out for a while.
Hi, I'm Jackie Cation. You're listening to the Dork Forest. It is available on all of the websites, and including iTunes and Stitcher and YouTube. And if you go to dorkforest.com or jackiecation.com, you'll find links to all of it. And then I have another podcast with Lori Kilmartin just about stand-up comedy. But this is the Dork Forest, and it's January 2020, so Happy New Year, and feel free to start donating again. That's right. Donations went off last year, and I don't blame you, but think of me. And PayPal will let you do it monthly if you want, but I understand if you don't want, because monthly is its own commitment. But the people who do it monthly, I said do. I totally appreciate that. But there is also going to be new merch. I'm phasing out one of the Dork Forest t-shirts. I think it's the black one. It might be the green one. The green one's almost completely out of stock, so I think it might be the Dork Forest one itself. But feel free to try and order stuff so that I can get those two new shirts on the website, because right now the merch page is a bit crowded, shall we say. By the way, my website is done by Vilmos. You know that. The song that was just sang was composed by Mike Rickberg. He'll sing his version of the Mexican hat dance at the end of the program, and Patrick Brady is going to fix this audio and has been doing it for these many years, and I genuinely appreciate that about him so much. The new shirts are going to be a shirt with a bunch of my dad's sayings and a drawing of his face on that Jenny Fine did. And Jenny Fine, of course, was the artist who did the Meat Shield t-shirt, and she also did the art for the Horcrux album and DVD. You can get all of my old merch still at jackiecation.com, and the new merch, feel free to email me, jackie@jackiecation.com, and we'll figure it out, is what I'm saying. I'm going to record a new album in 2020, but I don't know where or when. Feel free to come and watch me work on the new hour. At jackiecation.com has all of my tour dates, and at jackiecation on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. There's also a Dork Forest Ranger page that you can get into. Donations, PayPal, Venmo, do whatever you need to do. But I'm very appreciative of everybody's support over the last 13 years. Let's get into some dorkdoms, shall we? Hey, this is Jackie Cation, and I am on the internet with Robin Ryan at ROBINRYAN. 200 is your Instagram and Twitter and all the things, yes. Right? And we talked about Rollerderby last time, and now we're going to talk about the prison system, because you work in the prison system in Northern California or mid-state. I think of it as mid-state.
Well, I'm between Sacramento and San Francisco.
Okay,
yeah.
So the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And you worked down here. Did you work with juveniles?
No, so I worked at LA County Men's Central Jail, and okay. I worked with inmates who were 18 to 25.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So adults.
Yeah.
And so you're in the education part of it, right? Yeah,
so I am a teacher. There are teachers at every state prison in California, and many, many, many of the county jails have education programs too.
Okay. And I screwed up the intro on this, so we had to start over. So I'm talking to Robin Ryan, and you are working for the prison system. What's it called?
CDCR. So it's California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation.
And I previously said, let's say it again. Just you and I know that I'm so glad that the word rehabilitation is still in it. And then you said...
Oh, it was out. It just came back in like 10 years ago. It was out for a couple of days.
Okay. Oh, fuckers.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, So what it means is that it also allows, people are doing time for crimes, but it gives them a chance to have something when they come out, right?
Yeah. So the goal for every inmate is to get a high school diploma or GED while they're in prison.
Yeah.
And so we
What's
start
the
off
difference?
With quite literally inmates that don't know their alphabet or don't know how to read, up to students that are inmates that have within like 4 or 5 credits to graduate from high school. And we also have students
Okay.
that have master's degrees and doctorates who can take college classes. So, and literally
Okay.
everything in between.
What is the difference between a GED and a high school diploma? Like,
So the high school diploma, obviously you get it from going to class and doing the assigned work from the teachers. And the GED
Okay.
is like competency testing to show that you are competent in the areas of math, English language arts, science, and social studies.
okay, so the GED means you kind of skip the classwork and just take the tests and go, no, I think I could pass these.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you could.
Okay.
I actually took them about a month ago because I'm teaching GED and I am an elementary teacher at heart. And I was like, I don't know if I could even pass these. And I did. So that's good.
Oh, good. Yeah, so it's an attainable goal to be able to
Yeah.
to pass them. Good. What about and so right now you're teaching GED now, but what did you teach at the men's
So at the Men's Central Jail, I taught high school. So all of my students were on track to get a high school diploma, and they would basically come in and do like an independent study type program based on like what they needed in order to graduate.
Yeah.
And so it was more independent study work. This is still a lot of independent study, but I guide it much more.
Like, is it a classroom full of people studying for the competency tests, and you're teaching them how to pass those tests?
Yeah. So I have 3 classes. Each class is 2 hours long during the day. And we go in based on, everybody goes into a class based on reading score. And so my reading score starts like around a 7th grade reading level and goes up from there.
Okay, just a certain amount of comprehension and ability to read the material.
Yes,
is how they separate all the different folks.
Yeah. So then, in order, like for our where I am, they have to reach. Like we have a TABE is the test that we give them. It's a test of adult basic education. And that's like the reading scores that they get. And so they get that when they first get into prison. Everybody gets a reading score. And that actually determines quite a lot about like your time in prison, whether you can get certain jobs or
take a note when we're all in prison to not slough off that test is what you're saying.
Yes. And so a few years ago, it was like they could get milestones, which is basically time off their sentence for improving on that test. And so people bombed the test and would get like a 2.0 or 1.0. And then they'd complain that they can't get these like, quote unquote, good paying jobs that pay 83 cents an hour, making glasses.
Yeah.
They complain that they can't get those. And it's like, well, yeah, but they have a minimum standard of a 10.0 on the TABE and you have a 1.0.
Yeah.
Like, that's your own damn fault.
Does anyone bomb the test so that they can get really much better at it and then get time off?
So they don't get milestones for that test anymore. So now that we have a CASAS test, which is another
acronym.
Yes, and I don't actually know what that one stands for. A math test and a reading test, and so people will now intentionally bomb the first one of that, and then as they go, it's every 10 points or so that they raise their score, they can earn a milestone if they've also gone the correct number of hours to class in the right time frame and stuff like that. So.
Right, there's a bunch of hoops to jump through.
There's a lot of math. There's a lot of math.
Right, don't bomb the math. And it's interesting about people who are criminals. They might want to try to work the system. Try to game
crazy. They like to work the system. They're like, okay, what do I need to get a milestone? And I'll be like, oh, you need a 238. And they're like, okay. How many questions exactly do I have to get right? And I'm like, I don't know. Like
right. And if I did know, I might want to teach you to go more than the distance here.
I know. And, you have to get it again. You have to get those certain number of hours in between in order to take the next one. So if you started at 217 in the math, let's say, and you needed 246 in the math to take the GED, like we can be there for 3 years just trying to get you milestones to pass the math test. Like, hurry up and get out, you know?
Right. Feel free to
Yeah.
live your life eventually out of this building.
Yeah, I don't need to see you every day.
Yeah. What are before we get more into the nitty-gritty, I would like to hear a fun story. You have many fun stories about the gentleman you have worked with over the last 15 years?
No. 3 or 4? With it
3 or 4 like in this the new gig. Yeah.
No, in general.
Yeah,
like I've only been teaching in the jail and prison system for like within 5 years. Yeah. I'm going
It
on
feels like you have been in this industry for decades.
No, I taught elementary school for 10 years.
Okay. Well, those kids are crazy too. You got good stories there.
I'd much rather teach in prison than elementary school.
Why? What just happened?
Okay.
Yeah.
Because like my last year teaching elementary school, every day was an adventure of one girl throwing desks at the boy who was breathing too loud. And then another boy like watching porn on his cell phone in the bathroom and smoking cigarettes and wondering why I'm upset about it.
And he's what, 9?
He was 9. Yeah. And so in prison, at least, like the different ethnic groups have different rules about school.
Okay.
So the Northerners, like, they go to school, they keep their head down, they do not get in trouble, like, at all. So I have one class that's mostly Northerners, and it's by far my best class.
I am so sorry to ask this question.
Yes.
Please define a Northerner.
Okay, so in prison, there are different groups of people that are divided by race. So
I have seen
Northern
some
Hispanic.
movies.
Yes.
Northern Hispanic?
Northern Hispanic. And then Southerners, which are Southern Hispanic. And then there's Paisas, who are Hispanic, but from another country. And then there's black and whites. And then others.
So there's black people, there's white people, there's other people. And then the Latino community or the Hispanic community is split up into 3 or 4 different groups?
3 different groups.
And the Northerners are from Canada?
Northern California? Quite literally.
Northern California.
Northern California.
Literally Northern California.
Yes.
Southerners from Southern California.
Yes.
Another country could be Mexico, could be Cuba, could be Spain.
Could be Honduras.
Could be Guatemala.
Yeah.
Could be South America, Central America.
They don't speak English as their native language.
Okay.
And so they kind of...
Do you speak Spanish?
Do I speak Spanish? I speak enough Spanish to let them know that I know what they're talking about when they're talking in Spanish.
Okay.
And it's never anything good.
Right. They're rarely discussing Don Quixote.
No. No.
Have you read Cervantes? No, I haven't.
Yeah. You'd be impressed with the books that these guys have read. Seriously. They have literally nothing to do 90% of the time. And most of them are very avid readers.
Okay.
And so it's really impressive to me. Like, my clerk brings a new book every day, and I'm always like, what happened to the book you were reading yesterday? And he's like, I finished it. I'm like, okay.
Right.
Meanwhile, I haven't read a book in 3 years because there's Twitter, you know?
Right. You've got the horrors of the internet.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is this reminds me of the first time I went to Arkansas to meet Andy's dad and his stepmom, his dad's wife, who is now his widow. Great story. Anyway, let's get to it. The people in Arkansas that I met were all these guys who'd walk down this road outside he lived outside of Hot Springs in a little town. And they'd walk down this road every day at 3:00 to get stoned and drink beers with Andy's dad. And one of the first guys I met was this guy, toothless, army jacket, giant beard. And he said to me, have you read that new Umberto Eco book?
And you're like, No?
No. I've read
reading
one
that book?
Umberto. I read one Umberto Eco book, The Name of the Rose, and it was dense and difficult and fascinating, but too hard. Hard book to read. And
Yeah.
it was awesome.
Yeah.
So that's like, I mean, they'll read anything is what you're saying, because they're incarcerated.
Yes. And they don't get much in the way of like news or even like outside information that's relevant to the world. So they're
Okay.
I hate to use the phrase captive audience, but they kind of
Yeah.
are. You know, they want a lot of information that they just can't get a lot of other places. So
Right.
okay, but my favorite story ever. Can I tell you my favorite story ever from working?
Please do.
So I was working at MCJ in downtown LA, and I had seen this guy. He worked on the floor I worked on, and he was an inmate. And the inmate, like, they have the job is called porter. So they're kind of the runners, and they clean the hallways and things like that. And I'd seen him every day for months. And he said, "Oh, hey, miss," and I was nice to him. I sharpened his pencil, you know, whatever. And he was, "Oh, hey, miss," and I was like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" And he's like, "I'm getting out tomorrow." And I was like, "Awesome." And then I looked at him and I said, "What are you going to do differently?" And completely straight faced, he goes, "Heroin." And I was like, "How is that different?" And he goes, "Oh, miss, I used to do meth." And I was like,
oh, dude. Not what I meant, man. Not what I meant.
I was just like, I guess be the change you want to see in the world. I didn't know what else to say.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, buddy. Wow.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah. It's like my
Oh,
favorite
man.
worst story. You know, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're all vague degrees of darkness, you know?
I mean, I definitely, like, another fun one was trying to explain that Oakland and Oklahoma were not the same place.
Oh, interesting.
With no map. Like, I didn't have a map. And so
okay.
So I was in the county jail. We didn't have any maps.
Okay.
And it was like, okay, does anybody have a U.S. history book? Like, give me, and they had ripped out all the maps in the U.S. history books. And I had to like draw a map and be like, here's Oklahoma and here's Oakland. They're not the same place. Like, they're not.
Wow.
Oakland is in the Bay Area and Oklahoma is in the Midwest. And then I had to explain what the Midwest was. And this same student told me that one time that he had seen every inch of LA because he'd been, what's the hill in the Griffith Park? He'd been to Griffith Park, so he knew all of LA.
Wow. Nope.
Man. No.
No. I'm glad you saw Griffith Park.
Yeah.
It's a very pretty park.
Yeah.
And it's huge.
Seen all of LA, I promise you.
No. I don't know if you've been to Van Nuys, buddy. But it's pretty sweet.
Oh, you know.
Yeah.
I hear traffic's good this time of year.
Traffic's great right now, I'm told. I haven't left my house. I walked to the 7-Eleven 3 days ago. So
my dad was tested for COVID on Sunday. And so he lives with me. So I am under quarantine by myself. But my grandmother called my mom yesterday and said that she was using makeup wipes to wipe everything down that she touched. And I had an extra bottle of bleach wipes. So I drove to my grandmother's house, which normally I told her I would be there in like an hour and a half to 2 hours. And 50 minutes.
Wow.
And I left a bottle of bleach wipes on her back porch.
Sure.
And then I wiped the bottle with one of the bleach wipes. And I wiped down the back gate, like the front and back of the back gate. And then I drove home.
Did you get to wave?
Nope, I did not see her at all.
Oh, well, that's the brutal thing. I was the mailman came yesterday or the day before, and he almost handed me the mail because I was like, "Can you take that box?" And he goes, "Yeah, I can take that box." And someone had ordered like a big box of merch from JackieCation.com, which I completely appreciate, folks. But I had wiped it down and stuff, but I was like, is that big enough, or do you need me to drive it to the post office? And he's like, "No, I can take it." And then he almost handed me the mail, and I said, "Why don't you put it in the mailbox? Why don't we do the thing where we don't touch each other for a second?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, I think good idea."
Yeah. I knew that if I had seen my grandma, I would have gone in to give her a hug and She's
Yeah, yeah.
invincible and went to 3 grocery stores this morning. And
Oh wow. Nope.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
No.
My Solomon Giorgio's you remember him?
Yep.
Stand-up comic Solomon Giorgio? He tweeted this thing the other day about how his mother survived famine and forced marches, and she was offended when he called to see if she was all right. So
Yeah.
she's from Ethiopia.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my grandmother's from New York City. Like, she doesn't think anything is going to get her.
Right. She's wrong. We're all wrong. We all need to flatten the curve here, obviously, just to make sure everyone doesn't get sick at once. That's what I told my dad, who's 83. He's like, hey, I tried to go to the VA, and they were like, nah, you don't need to. And and I was like, yeah, Dad, you don't. I know you're bored. Paint me a Batman. So
Pretty much.
yeah, pretty much. So do you have problems getting sort of like, is there equipment that you can't get that you've had to create? Like, you had to draw a map.
I had to draw
Are
a
you
map.
pretty good at drawing a map now?
I'm better at drawing a map. Yeah. And it's bad. I'm not good at art to begin with, but it's bad. So just, an outline of the United States and like where I kind of think Oklahoma is.
Right. I would have a hard time.
Prison's a little different. The prison has more resources. And so I can use a lot more. And like, I don't have internet access in my classroom, but I do have an office. That all the teachers share. And so I can go into the, like, if somebody has a question, I can go into the office, and then
log
it out and then email it to myself and then either print it out or
right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
It's So what you were going to talk about sort of like what programs are available and what are the different types of yards?
Oh,
you sent me this list of like, here's some prison talk.
Yeah. Okay. So when you go to prison, I'm going to talk about the yards first. So when you go to prison, when you first get there, you get a point scale. There's a point scale from 0 to, I've seen like 220. And that's the highest I've seen. I'm sure it can go higher. And they look at your age, your criminal history, and the crime that you were sentenced to. And whether or not you are, like, if you're there for anything sexual, you're a whole different system or whatever. And based on that, they assign you a number of points. And based on the number of points, you go to one of 5 places. You go to a level 4 yard, a level 3 yard, a level 2 yard, a level 1 yard, or a camp. So level 4 yard is the most restrictive. They call it a 180, which means that like 180 degrees of the yard is completely fenced off and you can't actually see outside of it. So there's 180s and 270s. That have like
non-see-through walls.
Yes, you can't see what's happening outside of your yard.
Oof.
So those are those yards. So, and those are like the highest points.
So if you have a high point number, then then you're more dangerous, and so then you have to be at this level 4 yard.
Yes, and so a lot of times on a level 4, especially on a 180 or 270, you're being escorted in handcuffs everywhere you go. You're like, you have yard, but your yard is very small, so it's like one building at a time or a half a building at a time. And then there's regular like level 4 yards that aren't necessarily that restrictive.
Where you're not handcuffed?
Like, so I'm on a level 3 yard and they can like go to medical by themselves, or they can come to school by themselves, or they can, go talk to their counselor without somebody escorting them.
So they have some freedom of movement within the building that they're in.
Within the yard that they're on. So on my yard, there's, I think.
Define a yard. Is it an outdoor space?
Yes. So like the prison that I'm in has 4 yards. We have A yard, B yard, C yard, and D yard. They're very creative. And so I work, the school building is between A yard and B yard. So I get students from both yards and they like intermingle at school.
Okay.
And then when it's time to go back, they like go back to their own yard.
Okay.
So 1 through 7, people that live in buildings 1 through 7 go to A yard, or 1 through 6 in A yard, and then 7 through 13 or something go to B yard.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't 10, 11, 12. 12 is the highest on B yard.
Okay.
And so like within that, like they have a schedule for who goes outside when on each yard, who
What's in the yard?
So in the yard, there's an 1/8 of a mile track. There are handball courts and basketball courts. And within the 1/8 of a mile track, there is a like a field where people play football or softball. Softball not really on the level 3. It's more of a level 2 game. Metal bats and such.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
Basketballs that they can check out. There's a gym that they can go in and do like cross training, and they have activities in the gym.
Okay.
Yeah,
like sort of treadmill-y kind of stuff?
There's nothing really treadmill-y. It's more like group fitness classes. So they have yoga, and they have Pilates, and they have
so they're led, sort of like aerobics kind of led.
Yeah. So they're usually led by another inmate who offers to lead them. Yeah, and then I say offers, but that's their job. So everybody.
Oh, they get their 83 cents an hour to do that.
You get 8 cents an hour.
8 cents.
Yes.
Fuck.
I know. I know. I know. I pay my clerk at the end of the month, and I'm like, well, you made $5.23 this month.
Yeah. Don't spend it all in one place like on a fucking pack of cigarettes.
There's no cigarette. There's no cigarettes in prison.
There's no cigarettes in prison.
No cigarettes in prison. Yeah, no, not anymore. That's been gone for 15 or so years, I think.
Well, that's healthful.
Yeah.
Are they don't get to chew or vape or any of that either?
None of it. I mean,
wow.
In theory, none of it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all in theory.
Yes. There are drugs and marijuana run rampant through the prison, and that's just how it is right now. So.
Right. It's yeah, but $5 isn't going to get you.
No,
not
going to get you a whole lot. No.
Yeah, and
no, it's not, but it'll get you like coffee and soups for the month. Kind of what it'll get you. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So then.
Do they?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you should definitely.
I was just going to
talk to me about the daily schedule or the more yard.
Yeah. Well, okay. So level 4 yard, and then you go level 3 yard, and it's a little bit more flexible. They're still in cells. Like they have their cellie. They're the person that they share the cell with.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to a level 2 yard, and it's open dorms. And they're basically like open little cubicles that they put 8 to 10 people in, and you just live with all those people, but also all the people in the dorm.
Okay.
And the dorms, I think, have about like 300 people in them.
Wow.
And it to me seems like the worst
of the, yeah.
And they're a little looser. Like if you go to a prison that's just a level 2, there are no like officers with pellet guns in the guard towers. Level 3 and 4 have like their manned towers. And if you could possibly be shot with whatever they're shooting.
Right.
And it's not, they shoot like rubber bullets, or they shoot like beanbags.
Right. And just to sort of get people to stop doing whatever they're doing.
Yes. Non-lethal rounds.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then you go to a level 2, and there shouldn't, like ours is a level 2 and a level 3. So we have towers and stuff. But the level 2 generally don't have towers that are manned. And then there wouldn't be like a tower on every yard or all. And sometimes they get a little loose on a level 2. And so, the prison that I used to work at, I moved about a year ago. I moved from Southern California to Northern California. They would just, the officers would quite literally just like open the doors at the beginning of the day, and the inmates could come in and out as they pleased.
Okay.
But it's not supposed to be how it's supposed to be. A little bit tighter than that, where there's specific buildings that have yard at specific times.
Right, and it's sort of controlled how many people are in that yard.
Yes.
And those walls are see-throughable, or
yeah, so
they're
we just have
like chain link fences, or
we have 3 layers of chain link fence, and one of the layers is electrified. Depending on which prison you go to, they have something called a collapsible fence, which literally means that if you like bump into it, it collapses around you and then just gets tighter and tighter.
Yikes!
Yeah, that one.
That in Dungeons and Dragons they call that entangle.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I was terrified of that one because that was the outermost fence. When you walked in, it was the outermost fence, and it was like, stay away from that fence. Like,
right, you don't want to get mixed up with that crazy ass fence.
No. So you kind of preventing escape is a big part of the policy.
Sure,
so the fences are a big part of that, obviously. But they're just chain link. They're just chain link. But they work.
Yeah. Well, so how do people get time off?
Okay.
Besides,
so. Showing improvement on test scores is one way you get time off.
How much time?
So it's
like what?
2 weeks.
How little or how most?
So it's 2 weeks per range per test. So if you started at the very bottom and worked your way up, you could probably get maybe 32 weeks altogether. But that's almost impossible to do.
Right. But you might be able to get like half a year off.
Yes. And then
if you started at the bottom. And then for getting your high school diploma or GED or an AA degree or a BA degree, you get 6 months off for that degree. Oh, wow.
If you take college classes, you get 3 weeks per class that you get a C or higher in.
Okay.
They have what they call RAC credits, and I don't know what the acronym is, but things like AA, NA, Al-Anon, any sort of like evening self-help group. You get like per X number of hours, you get a week off, and I don't know what the hours are. But
like how many meetings you go to of self-help or therapy or whatever.
Yes.
You can get a week off.
Yes.
Okay.
And then even like the sentencing. So if you're sentenced to 10 years, but so everybody has a status, right? So you have a custody level. So you're either maximum, close, or medium or minimum. And so maximum is you're going to be on that level 4 yard. You're going to be walked everywhere. Close, although they call it close, which it doesn't make any sense. Anyway, you have to actually check in an extra time during the day. So at noon, everybody that's closed custody goes to check in, and nobody moves until the closed custody is cleared.
Okay.
And I have some students that are that. Most of my students are just like a medium custody level. So they've been in a while, or they're not there for something super violent and haven't gotten a write-up for anything super violent recently.
Okay.
And then minimum custody. So, when they talk about like the firefighters that are inmates, they are...
No. What?
Wait. Yeah, no. So like if a firefighter inmate or an inmate firefighter, they're at camp, they're usually there for something nonviolent, and they've lowered their points enough so that they can get to camp.
Okay. Pardon me, Robin Ryan. Let's unpack what the fuck that was. Firefighters who are in prison because they're bad guys?
No. I'm sorry. Flip that around. So they're inmates, firefighters. So
they're inmates who become firefighters while in prison?
Yes.
Yeah,
they're the ones that are, they do a lot of work to put out the fires in California and stuff like that.
They send them on wildfire stuff.
Yes.
out of the prisons.
Yeah, they were.
Does that pay 83 cents an hour?
No, I don't know. I don't know what it pays. It pays more.
Oh, Jesus.
And
oh, good.
what I have found from talking to inmates that have either done it or want to do it is they love it.
Because they get to feel of some use.
They get to feel of some use. They feel like they're giving back to their community. If you are at a camp, your sentence is 50%. So if you were sentenced to 10 years and you do it at a camp, you're only going to do 5 years.
Okay.
So you stay out of trouble.
Yeah.
But the ones that I've talked to that have done camp or want to go to camp, they do it because what I've been told is that they feel like they took something from their community. And by going to camp, it gives something back to their community.
Oh, so camp is a voluntary thing?
Yes. Yeah.
You're not assigned camp.
You are not assigned camp. You do not have to do camp if you don't want to.
Okay.
You can go to a level 1 if you don't want to do camp. But yeah. So, and then
but if you go to camp, you get 50% off of your thing, but they put you to work in sort of firefighting kind of thing. Is it all firefighters?
I don't know if it's all firefighters, and it's not all year firefighters. So there's all of the training that goes into it and the physical fitness and all of everything that goes into being a firefighter. And when they get out, they're completely, if CAL FIRE would hire them, and CAL FIRE is starting to hire former inmates. They're completely, like, they can go seamlessly from working at one of these camps in CAL FIRE, like one of these camps, to CAL FIRE.
Right, because they were trained by CAL FIRE.
CAL FIRE doesn't have to pay to train them and stuff like that. So,
because I think they already paid to train them, because they're being trained by essentially CAL FIRE, right?
Yes, but their CDCR is paying to train them, basically.
Right, right. So yeah, there's only prejudice would be the only reason not to hire them when they get out, because you're scared of ex-cons.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the employment rate's got to be ridiculous. But okay, so they go to camp, they get 50% off, and there's no shortage of people that want to go to camp.
I don't think so.
And is it only men who get to go to camp, or are there women camps?
There are women camps. I know that there are women camps.
You teach at a men's prison, though,
I do
right?
teach at a men's prison. Yes.
Is that does that get? I know that I remember you saying stories about how they're like that it can be. I'm sure that the men are hilarious, and they're also very sweet, and that they're also very desperate. Do you have any stories revolving around any of those three words?
No, because the minute somebody gets too sweet or too desperate, immediately gets shut down. Like,
you have to.
I'm sorry,
right?
sir, that is completely inappropriate. If you continue, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Or if it continues, I'm going to call the officer and tell him that you need to leave. And then immediately it's a write up for over familiarity is the term. And you will never see that person again.
Because they get pulled out of your class.
They get pulled out of the prison.
Where do they go?
To another prison.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, of course, that depends on how
bad.
But that's kind of the
right.
Yeah.
Right. Because what I remember
that wrote a letter to, when I was working down south, he wrote a letter to like one of the people at the college that was like, "Hey, baby, wait for me, na." And she immediately gave it to me, and I turned it in. And because she didn't work at the prison, like he wasn't moved or anything. But then the following semester, he tried to get a face-to-face class, like taught by a female instructor from that same college.
Yeah.
And I actually turned it in, and then I went to the registrar's office at the college, and I was like, "Hey, there's this guy.
This is a guy.
Class. Like, can you rip up his registration form?" Like, yeah,
right. Because it's just not. I mean, there's so many safety concerns with some of this stuff that you want to be encouraging, right? I mean, that was one of the things that I loved about some of the stories is you're like, I want these guys to get better and I want them to have a chance when they get out,
I do. That's all I want. I want the absolute best for them every single day. I love my job as a teacher and I take it very seriously. And
Yeah.
I want them to succeed and I want them to get their high school diplomas or their GEDs. And there's nothing more that makes me happy. And what I know about working in the prison is that I have to have incredibly strong boundaries and I have to not let myself get bullied or manipulated, because the second that happens, I'm done for. They don't.
Right. There's no mercy on that. I mean, that it's an inch to a mile immediately. But I mean, I know that even I remember you telling stories about, just teaching these guys to read.
Yeah.
It was just, there's joy in it.
I love it. Okay, I'm going to tell you another fun story that since we've been talking, I thought of.
Please do.
It was my second week in the prison that I'm at now. And somebody walked into my office that I was sharing with somebody else just like 2 minutes before we were closing. And I didn't even look up at him. And I just said, hey man, we're done for the day. Like you can't come in here at 1:43 on a Friday afternoon, like you leave at 1:45, right. You got to go. And he looked at me and he was like, miss. And I looked up at him and he goes, you don't remember me. And I was like, I'm sorry, I don't. And he said, I was your student in LA County. And I was like, oh. And he goes, and you came out. And I immediately went to put my hand on my alarm, right? Like I wear an alarm for just this reason. And he goes, you kicked me out. And I was like, oh. And he said, I decided at that moment, nobody was ever going to take education away from me again. And I was like,
oh, there you go.
What can I do to help you? And he was like, I got my high school diploma at my last prison.
Yeah.
And I'm here to sign up for college.
Oh.
And I was his barrier to signing up for college. and I literally spent another 20 minutes with him and got him. It wasn't even my job. I'm not even a college person, but I spent the time with him and I got him signed up for college and I got him all the paperwork. I got him all registered. And then
and you're like third prison, man.
Yeah. So the college coordinator goes, he wanted a face-to-face class. And he was like, we've already filled up our face-to-face classes. And I was like, have you told the students yet? He was like, I haven't announced who got the face-to-face classes. And I was like, great, kick somebody out and put this guy in. Like I messed with him so hard in county by kicking him out. And I'm not doing that again. And he did. He kicked somebody out that he didn't think would take it seriously anyway.
Okay.
But it had just been like a complete lotto system.
Yeah.
So and put that guy in. And that guy is 2 semesters from his associate's degree right now.
Okay.
And he checks in with me every now and again. He checks in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's the kind of stuff. Those are the stories. I mean, the thing is the system itself is so rigid because it's a prison.
Yes.
And so it's going to be. But I like the stories of just like the perseverance of it.
Uh-huh.
And you're like, yeah, I'm trapped in this box, but fuck you people. I'm going to read all of these books and I'm going to, try to get my shit together. And I'm going to try to when I get out, I'm not going to do meth. It turns out I'll do heroin.
Yeah. I mean,
and
maybe today that's going to be enough for him, right? Like maybe today the decision to not do meth is a real thing. It is. Maybe he has never not done meth in his adult life. You know what I mean? So just the step one of literally being like, I'm not going to do meth. Great. I'm going to do heroin. Well,
right. I mean, he had already done the thing where he was the guy, he was the runner, right? He was the porter guy.
Yeah. So he had he had some responsibility. He
had a little bit of, he had some movement,
Yeah.
He could get out and about. That's kind of, that's its own joy too. I mean, and there's things where you're like, well, you don't want to settle for this shit, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to say, well, this is all that I can be. This is my third prison. And, there was a guy, in the 90s, I had my day job was at a catalog called Northern Sun Merchandising, hippie skippy t-shirts and whatever. And it was great. I was customer service. And 1 year, a year or two, well, that's fine. A year or two before I had the job, the Northern Sun Merchandising had an article in the Minneapolis Star Tribune talking about how great the Northern Sun merch was, how great the merch was. And next to it was another sort of feel-good story about a guy who was in Stillwater Prison in Minnesota who had started a bonsai club of bonsai trees. And he got bonsai trees and he taught other inmates how to bonsai a tree, which is interesting because it's a guy who's incarcerated being twisted by the system, taking a tree and twisting it and stunting it and making it a beautiful tiny oak, right? I mean, bonsai trees are those Japanese. Yeah. We've all seen Karate Kid. Anyway, so this guy's name was Bill. And because the articles were right next to each other, the 800 number for Northern Sun was in our article. And so he started calling the 800 number and talking to all the different people at Northern Sun.
Interesting.
And because they were all just stoner hippies, they were like, hey, man, yeah. And we would talk to him for like a half an hour.
His phone time for the day.
It was great. And he was, by the time I got to him, like half of the staff had visited him.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was like, will you come and visit me? And I was like, maybe. I don't know. And so me and my friend Maureen Fitzpatrick, and she'd been there a lot longer than me. She was like, I didn't go last time. I'd go with you. And so we went and visited Bill Dye, who killed a pizza delivery kid, and said that he didn't do it, and would joke how it was that he was a political prisoner. Because he was not a political prisoner. He was a pizza delivery guy. Yeah. And, but he was like 15 of his 30 years that he was in. And so we went on like sort of a public day.
Okay.
And so we went through, and Stillwater's a maximum security prison. So that's the only prison I've ever been in. And like I've been in jail, but that's because I have 2 DUIs. But so we get in and we get to meet Bill, and he's, he gives us each a bonsai tree, and it was fast. Yeah. I mean, it was an interesting story about a guy who's like, I'm in jail for almost his whole life. I think he tried to rob the pizza guy. And so it was a sort of an accidental manslaughter, but he killed a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to.
That's what's against the law, it turns out. You can't rob people, and you're not supposed to murder people.
No,
that's
they frown on that. Definitely frowned upon.
Yeah, but he had, he had gone to school, and he had gotten, he was the kind of guy that, you could tell that he had sort of told himself a story about the night. But he had also, sort of made peace with it. Like, I remember you telling me that, oh, wait, no, it wasn't you. It was some other woman who works in a prison. Hi, I've taken over your door.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm completely engaged.
It was, she told me that one of the things about sending someone to prison for things, for crimes that someone did commit and they admit to committing, is that they're paying their price, And she said that some of the people that she met were some of the most, because they were doing the time and they were paying the price of it, that they were absolved of a fair amount of the guilt, And that going forward, what they were working on was trying to do sort of a living amends
Yep.
to never do it again.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So they have this whole thing where like, yes, I did that horrible thing, and now I am in prison. And it is not good. And it is not positive. But I am being punished for it. And once I am done being punished for it, I will have been punished for it.
Yeah.
And she said it was talking to some of those people were like, the real trick is when I get back out, now that I've paid for my crime, is to not do another crime.
Mm-hmm.
And she said it was one of the most fascinating parts of, I think she's a counselor.
Okay. Yeah.
Of some sort.
A therapist or something like that.
A therapist or something inside the prison system.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was, so that was kind of a really cool, I mean, because you think about, obviously you put in one of the things about the emotional toll.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see when you try to talk to these people, when you're trying to talk to these guys?
So I have found in my completely anecdotal, been in for 2 years, completely anecdotal, is that at 7 years in, things have to change. So at 7 years in, inmates either make a complete change in who they are, and they really take in all of like the self-help and the victim's awareness and education and things like that. And they decide at that point, 7 years in, I'm going to do everything I can to change who I was.
Oh, wow.
And then when they do that, it doesn't matter how long their sentence is after that, but I have noticed that there's like a piece about being in prison.
Okay.
After that, like, not a peace, an acceptance, where it's less fighting. They're more like my previous clerk was LWOP, which is life without the possibility of parole. And it took him 10 years to get to that point. And he actually applied for a commutation and did not get it. He horrific triple murder that he did when he was 18 and on meth, and he's 38 now and is a completely different person.
Right.
And he still has no chance, so it took away his life forever, but he also knows that he earned it. It's not, the judge didn't give him that sentence. He earned that sentence, which is a huge distinction. He definitely internalized that he earned his sentence. He destroyed a family.
Right.
As opposed to the inmate that I had last week when we watched a video about somebody getting impaled in their head and they were fine, except their personality changed a little bit. Who then decided to shout in front of the whole 2 classes. We were 2 classes watching a movie together. That whenever the last time he shot somebody in the head, he didn't notice their personality changed.
And that guy's 7 years in too?
He's like 11 years in, and it's his 3rd term. So he's never going to change. There's no, like, I never want him to be my neighbor. But my first, I would want him to be my neighbor every day, because I know if I'm sick, he's going to come check on me. I know that if I leave my trash cans out, he's going to bring them up, just because it's the nice thing to do,
Right. Right.
But that guy, I would never trust him. The other one that I have now, I don't trust him with a pencil in my class,
right. Yeah. Because, that guy, I mean, I suppose, it's individuals, Yeah. And I think it's fascinating that these people, that acceptance is there, and the crimes are horrific, but it doesn't mean that there shouldn't be sentencing reform, right? And prison reform.
I absolutely believe with all of my heart that nobody should get more than like 20 years, no matter what, as their base.
Right.
It could be 20 to life. I think everything has to, I think that the whole system has to run on hope, right? So when you give somebody who's 60, 130 years, there's no hope.
Right.
So that's where I feel like a lot of the danger in prison comes in, is especially like the young guys that get LWOP or 275 years or whatever, but they're 23 and they're
Right. So there's no
never
hope.
getting out.
Yeah.
Then that's where you get using
Why
drugs
bother?
and more drugs and then owing money and then getting a little poke on the yard, or, a poke on the
Yeah.
yard is like getting stabbed.
Oh,
Yeah. And, so
yeah.
that to me is like where, when there's no hope of ever getting out. And
Yeah. Yeah. If it's run on hope and it's run by it, and if we encourage our judges to literally have common sense, and the thing is the law is for everyone, but it also has to be, there's reason why there's human judges,
and it's not even necessarily the judges, because most cases don't go to trial. It is
Really?
the DAs. And John Oliver did a great segment on the DA system in the United States. And they have so much power, and their whole goal is quite literally to just clear cases.
Yeah.
When I was in county one day, a student came to me and said, Miss, they offered me a deal. And I was like, okay, tell me what it is. And he said, the death penalty. Should I take it? And I was like, I don't know. You can't ask me if you should take the death penalty. I don't know why you're here. I did, because I Googled him. But it's fun when you have students you can Google. I said, I don't know why you're here. I don't know if you should take the death penalty or not.
The death penalty doesn't feel like a deal.
No. So he stayed for another year and a half. And at the end of it, his sentence was 11 years with time served and 80%. So he's getting out next year.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And so so do we know why the DAs have so much power?
I have no idea. I don't remember.
Like, I don't know
the John Oliver
how this got. Yeah. The John Oliver segment would tell me, but it must have been like sort of just feature creep, where they just like, then you can also do this, you can also do this, and then all of a sudden you have all this power. I mean, it's one of the things. Wasn't Kamala Harris a DA?
She was.
And but what I know about in the time since Ronald Reagan, in the 80s, and I'm 54, right?
Mm-hmm.
So since that time, the more cops on the street and the law and order people spent their entire time trying to pass this, this tough cop, 3 strikes and you're out kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people who wanted to go into politics had to go through that system.
Yes, to prove that they were tough.
Were tough enough. And so even going through that system, whether they agreed with it or not, you have to take that into account, that was part of the journey of the job,
Especially women, because that was the job that they could get into.
Yeah.
DA.
Yeah.
So Amy Klobuchar was also a DA.
That's right. That's right. So when both of them get slammed on their law and order stance, you're like, that was their way into politics. Yeah. And they were in an era when that was all that the politics were.
Yes.
That was their path, and that was how it had to be done. And you could do mitigating circumstances and you could try to change it, but it was that, well, that's crazy.
And then in California at some point, and I think it was like in the mid 90s, they started doing what they call enhancements. So like the clerk that I have now is there for bank robbery. And he, his base term was like 5 years or 7 years for robbing the banks that they caught him robbing. And then he got an additional 15 years for a gun enhancement. So when he was arrested, he had a gun on him. And so he got additional time. All of these guys that are in a gang, they get a gang enhancement. So it's 5 to 15 years for a gang enhancement and 5 to 15 years for a gun enhancement if they have a gun on them or the crime was committed with a gun.
They stack.
Yes.
They freaking stack?
Yeah, so you can go for an attempted murder, and your base term is 7 years. But they suspect you're in a gang, and you used a gun to shoot near somebody.
That's 37.
It's up to 37. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
Holy.
Yeah. So they're trying to do away with enhancements because they realize how much it screwed everybody over. And then, but it's amazing how when you look at somebody's sentence, and I can actually read the sentencing report and the probation reports. And their one charge is, residential burglary, but then they were in a gang, and so their residential burglary charge, which would be 2 years, if it was like their first time or whatever, is now 17 years. And you're just like, how is that possible? Like, and that's
and that's clear cut injustice is what that is. You could see that from space.
Yeah,
how wrong that is.
Yeah, and that's the deal they took.
And that's the deal they took because they thought that's like that kid who asked you if that was a good deal. No, that's not a good deal.
No, it's not.
A little bit of patience, man.
Yeah,
because you can wait and live.
Yeah.
Well, this has not been a super cheerful episode of the Dork Forest, but it has been. There's some hope here.
Yeah, there's some hope. I will say there are a lot of bills in the California Senate right now that are giving hope to inmates, reducing sentences.
Right.
If you are,
and they put rehabilitation back into it.
If you're under 25 when you committed your crime, you fall under a special category, and after 15 years, you are up for parole no matter what.
That's a great bill.
So there are a lot of things. They're going back and looking at a lot of people's 3 strikes. Do they deserve a strike for that?
Yeah.
There's somebody I know that's his 3rd strike was a DUI.
Right.
A non-violent DUI. So, he's got some hope, although he also has cancer. So, there's that. So there is good things happening.
And quite honestly, the reason I asked you to do the Dork Forest is because you're one of the things that bring them that hope. And I loved it.
Thank you.
And so it's really cool, Robin Ryan, to talk to you. And we should know we're at an hour.
Okay.
And
listen, I just want the pandemic along with all of the listeners.
Sure, we'll do it. It'll be fine. These are not the end times. They're just shitty times. Don't worry.
There you go. A little hope from next
That's it. That's right. Always. And don't sweat it. And don't bet on the Rapture. So, but I would say this, people, Rangers, you know it. At Robin Ryan 200 is her Twitter and Instagram. And go back and listen to the Rollerderby one, which is also a great episode. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Rangers, you know the rules out there. Take care of each other.
My hat, my hat, my hat. They're dancing around my hat. My hat, my hat, my hat. Well, what do you think of that? If it looks like a Mexican hat dance and it sounds like a Mexican hat dance, it's most likely a Mexican hat dance. So take off your hat and let's dance.
Yay! Oh my God. Why don't we just call that as the end of the show?